the Sun progress against the planned objectives. It will also further help to monitor and evaluate the overall progress of the Sun movement in Pakistan. And in addition to the joint assessment, we are also here today to launch the Pakistan Sun website, another important milestone. This website will ensure digital presence and uniform access to on-hand relevant information. The movement in Pakistan will continue playing a critical role towards increased commitment, partnerships and networking for the achievement of national and international nutrition goals. We look forward to continue to work with the government on the promotion of wise nutrition investments. As we all know, it is essential to consider the short, medium and long-term priorities as well as available context-specific evidence in regard to tackling malnutrition in Pakistan. WFP, in close collaboration with all key stakeholders, remains committed to partnering with the government of Pakistan in its strategic initiatives to address the high malnutrition rates that are negatively impacting on the future development potential of the country and its people. Thank you.
जिसको बुलाने जा रहा हूँ, she has a number of national and international caps. She is the chair of Benazir Income Support Program, a focal person for nutrition, member of Global Lead Group, and जो मैं कह रहा हूँ, honestly, it's not as a Secretary of the State, being a student of nutrition and health. She always made us proud. हमें उनका वो शानदार और जानदार सफ़र भी याद है जो उन्होंने किया for Director General of World Health Organization. Thank you, ma'am, for making us proud, and we are happy to have you today. With this, I will request ma'am for your remarks, please.
Ma'am, Nausheen, Dr. Nausheen, Catherine, Aslam Shaheen Saab, friends, Shabina, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here. I welcome you all with two hats today. I have the honor of being a member of the Sun Lead Group, so in that capacity I welcome you from New York. And in my capacity as the focal person for nutrition for the government of Pakistan, I welcome you because this is a very exciting time for those of us who have tried to push the needle on nutrition for a very long time in the country. As you know, malnutrition is amongst the few top priorities of the Prime Minister, and around that a number of activities are being planned. So it is really a very exciting time for all of us who've invested a lifetime in trying to push the needle on nutrition. And I think it is for very good reason, because we know that there are major conceptual transformations now in the sphere of development. Evidence and data has told us that the wealth of the nation today is not so much its physical capital, its environmental capital, but is its human capital. And that in the world of today and in the world of tomorrow, more importantly, only nations that have invested in their human capital will be able to follow the trajectory of growth and prosperity and development. Studies have shown us that 60% of the wealth of the nation comes from its human capital, and for that reason it's very important for countries to invest in policies such as universal health coverage, such as universal access to primary and secondary education, equal opportunities, merit-based equal opportunities for higher education, and most importantly in the malnutrition sphere. So the rationale for this is very clear. Now the nutrition agenda and all policies to address malnutrition are complicated because of a number of different reasons, and I want to highlight 4 reasons in particular. Firstly, nutrition is a multi-sectoral agenda. It's not the agenda of one sector alone. You cannot silo it in one ministry or in one sector. There is an interplay of the public and private sectors, of various ministries and agencies in the government system and in Pakistan, because we're a federating system. There are roles of provincial agencies, of federal agencies, which is why coordination is so important. And I think that is where the Sun group has really brought a lot of value, because they have developed sophisticated mechanisms of coordinating actors, and I think Aslam Shaheen Saab has done a wonderful job of spearheading all these activities in the country. That's one reason why nutrition is so unique. The second reason why nutrition is very unique is because malnutrition is very unique is because it happens on a spectrum. On the one hand, you have stunted children, wasted children, you have all forms of undernutrition from severe to all spectrums. Then you have, in the middle, you have a number of micronutrient deficiencies which may or may not be apparent. And at the other end of the spectrum, there is obesity. I'm sure you will understand that there are more people suffering from overweight and obese today than they are at the undernutrition end of the spectrum. And in countries like ours, in Pakistan's context, we see a double burden. So in the same home, in middle income homes, you will see children who are stunted, you will see men with central obesity and diabetes and high blood pressure, and adolescents who are obese. So we have a very complex malnutrition dynamic in the country. And I'm sure you all know that some of you must be knowing that there are some very complex intergenerational and developmental influences that interplay in this equation. We know from data and evidence that if a child has sustained undernutrition while that child is in the mother's womb, that undernutrition primes that child to react very differently to an obesogenic environment later in life, with resulting diabetes, with resulting obesity, with resulting high blood pressure. So there are complex epigenetic influences and intra and developmental influences connecting the undernutrition end of the spectrum to the overnutrition and obesity end of the spectrum. There's a massive genetic and environmental epigenetic influence interplaying in that. That is why when we talk about public policy interventions to address malnutrition, you have to look at the life course. I recall chairing the WHO Commission on Ending Childhood Obesity back in 2014 and 15, and that was the main new thinking that we brought to the table. That you have to, in order to address obesity, you have to start with preconception care. So the health of a grandmother will influence the health of the grandchild decades later. And it is that perspective of the intergenerational aspect of malnutrition, because of which you have to start with preconception care. You have to look after the mother when she's expectant, so that you have to protect her from the undernutrition aspect, but also from high caloric intake and overnutrition, because that has implications for the offspring. So that's the third dimension, unique dimension of nutrition. And the fourth unique dimension of malnutrition and nutrition policy and food policy relates to the peculiarities of the circumstances. So when, for instance, I put my international hat on and my NCD hat on, and when we talk about nutrition and food systems interventions in a Western developed context, there are a very different set of things that you talk about. You talk about soda consumption and how soda tax will interplay on obesity rates, and you talk about the regulatory levers, salt, trans fats, sugars, caloric content. You talk about the interplay of labeling and the marketing of food to children. But in the Pakistani context, although those considerations are also becoming relevant in urban settings, but we have a completely different set of public policy issues to think about that intersect with agriculture, with commerce, with local government, with the choices, with terms of trade for farmers, with how well our regulatory systems function in terms of food, in terms of a number of different things. So the context really matters when you are designing nutrition interventions. The context, culture, local realities, local regulatory capacity, food preferences, awareness, and for that reason, designing nutrition interventions is extremely complex. Now, as you all must be aware, in the Prime Minister's first speech, he talked about malnutrition, and I think he was perhaps one of the few heads of state in the contemporary world today who has attached such high importance to malnutrition across the spectrum. And as a result of that commitment, an effort is currently underway to design appropriate interventions, multisectoral interventions. You all must be aware of the SARS program, which was launched on the 27th of March. SARS has 7 pillars. It's one of the most ambitious programs any government has ever launched in the 6-decade history of this country. It's a program with 4 pillars and currently 115 policy aspirations, and the list is continuing to grow. And one of the 4 pillars centers on human capital development, of which nutrition is a very important part. The initial policy document of SARS is in the public domain, and as you will envisage from that very preliminary level of thinking, there are many interventions focused on nutrition with responsibilities of various sectors. There are a number of health interventions that have been designed. There are a number of very cost-effective, locally suited interventions that have been designed. For instance, we know from experience in Africa that if asset transfers of chicken and goats are done to poor families, that it helps us not only to boost their income levels, but it also impacts their nutrition and the cognitive ability of children, and we know that from evidence. So these, through provincial engagement, we are pushing the asset transfer of, as I said, goats and chicken, and also through provincial engagement, we are launching a very cost-effective intervention of promotion of kitchen gardening, because even if poor families have the tools and the know-how and the seed to grow vegetables, even in urban slums, we know that the ability of the nutrition of the family is impacted in a significant way. And in addition to these cost-effective measures, at the BISP, we are in the process of designing a conditional cash transfer for nutrition, and of course we are partners of the World Food Programme. We are ascertaining how, in a subset of infants, the administration of specialized nutrition food will impact stunting outcomes, will impact wasting outcomes, will impact the nutritional status of mothers who give birth to stunted children. That program is currently being designed, and we hope to roll it out in the next fiscal year. So to summarize, the SARS framework in its 3rd pillar has a number of different interventions of poor families that are locally suited to Pakistan. And as I always say, the success of these interventions and bring it down to a context where contractual rent seeking will mar all your efforts. This time around to design interventions that are not only locally suited, but that are also cost, and how important it is to launch this website. The joint evaluations with my New York headquarters and the 27 members of the lead group deliberate on how things look in countries and what levers are needed to accelerate action. So it's great to see things up and running. With my country hat on in Pakistan, I want to commend the Ministry of Health for their an objective opinion on how we are doing. I think that would be
that we are launching the first ever you so much, ma'am. We will talk about this website later because so we are trying this way. But this was a brief video we prepared and we thought we will run just before. I'm not able to do that. So now I request all of you to gather here for group photo because tea is ready. So I suggest we have a group photo. Tea, refresh and